on the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our family and our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again.
Welcome to our monthly AAA podcast, Affinity, Allie, and Annette on the road to good storytelling with your hosts, Allie Spooner and Annette Mori. This month, we'll be talking about spin-off series books or books that build on beloved characters from previous books. We feel really lucky to have author Jen Silver, who's also an Affinity Rainbow Publications author. And she's here with us today. Like myself, Jen wrote a book well into the future called Changing Times that incorporated characters from her very popular novel, Changing Perspectives, which was a Goldie finalist.
Following our podcast, we'll upload to a newly created YouTube channel to hope you consider subscribing so you never miss a podcast.
So it's my great pleasure to introduce Jen Silver. When not writing stories, Jen spends her days reading, playing golf, shooting arrows, and enjoying quality time with her wife, not necessarily in that order. Very smart of you to say that.
Yeah.
In case your wife is watching. Affinity Rainbow Publications published her debut novel, Starting Over, in 2014. Now, with more novels and short stories to her name, there's not as much time as she thought for other activities. Running from Love was shortlisted for a 2017 Diva Literary Award in romance. Changing Perspectives was a finalist for the 2018 Goldie Award, general fiction. Her audiobooks include Changing Perspectives, Starting Over, Darcy Comes Home, and Country Living, all narrated by Nicola Victoria Vincent. For the characters in Jen's stories, life definitely begins at 40 and older as they continue to discover and enjoy their appetites for adventure and romance.
All right. So without further ado, Jen, if you're ready, take it away.
Well, that's great. Thank you for the introduction. And so I'm going to read from Starting Over, which, as you mentioned, was my debut novel, and that's the cover for it. It was interesting to write, I have to say. So I'd never actually finished a book at that stage. I had various drafts of things sitting in drawers that hadn't gone anywhere. So this was my first completed novel, and I'm going to read from chapter 1, but I'm starting about 10 pages in, but I think you'll get the idea of what's happening. The second time around the ring road, and Jasmine felt she'd entered one of Dante's circles of hell. Hadn't she passed the university twice now? She had trusted Robin's directions rather than sat-nav, which Robin told her was useless in this area, likely to direct her to the bottom of a reservoir, a drowned village from the past like Atlantis. Then she saw it. The exit she wanted, but she was in the wrong lane, and there was a constant flow of traffic either side of her. She was doomed to make another pass of this circle, the circle of the damned. What had she done to deserve this version of hell? Falling in love with Robin? Could that be counted as a sin? It had started as a casual one-night stand, and then expanded to a series of one-nighters, sometimes two, whenever Rob visited London. Now she was hooked. She wanted more. And what was she going to find at Starling Hill Farm? Whenever she tried to fish for information, Robin would deflect her. So far, she'd only learned that she lived there with her business partner, Eleanor Winters. Googling it, there was only one small photo of the potter, black and white, which didn't give any useful information like hair color or eye. Even so, the woman didn't look like someone who would attract Robin. Rather mousy, she thought. But she obviously had some kind of a hold over her lover. What was it that Robin wouldn't tell her? Well, she was going to find out for herself if she ever got off the Huddersfield Ring Road. Arriving at the farm, an hour later than planned, Jasmine was in a foul mood when she finally drove into the yard. There were several vehicles parked up, an ancient Land Rover, an equally ancient Corsa, and a much newer, sleek, black Harley Davidson motorcycle. At least the presence of the bike showed that Robin was here. She pulled into the space next to the rust heap of a car and climbed out, feeling the stiffness in her knees. Her lower back screamed at her as well. Damn, she should have taken the train. The place looked deserted, in spite of the number of vehicles. The house had a lonely, forbidding air, its narrow windows and grey stone facade giving it a decidedly Gothic look. She gazed at the other structures, a chicken enclosure, and a rundown barn. Trying the house first seemed the best option. Knocking at the door, she wondered again if this hadn't been a colossal mistake. A quick cup of tea and she would head back to London. The door opened when she pushed on it. Of course, she was in the country now. Feeling like an overdressed burglar, she stepped into the gloom of a low-ceilinged room. Hello? Only the ticking of a clock from somewhere in the room greeted her entrance. Anyone home? Christ, how could anyone want to live here? The deathly quiet atmosphere started to creep her out. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. No messages. So Robin hadn't even been concerned that she was late. Angrily, she clicked on Robin's name in her contacts list. She hadn't driven 200 miles to be ignored. Into the silence came the sound of Robin's ringtone. She followed the sound into the kitchen. The ringing stopped as soon as she reached the device, sitting on the counter next to a mug of cold coffee. A large ginger cat sat on the window ledge, opened one eye and closed it again. Fuck's sake, Robin, where the hell are you? And who, may I ask, are you? Jasmine turned round and found herself looking at the mouse-like creature from the website. Older than she had expected. The photo on the website must be 20 years old at least. But blonde, blue-eyed, and unfortunately more attractive than the picture suggested. She put on her best smile and held out her hand. Jasmine Pepper, you must be Eleanor. The woman ignored her proffered hand and walked past her. She filled the kettle and put it on the aga. Without turning from the stove, the other woman said, Robin's in the studio. Sensing that was all she was going to get in the way of conversation, Jasmine said, oh, okay, thanks. She found her way back out into the yard. The studio must be the dilapidated-looking barn thing. For the second or possibly third time that day, she thought she should cut her losses and head back to civilization. Thank you.
Very
good,
good.
Jen.
I'd almost forgotten about your wry humor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I read your book so long ago, and yeah, I'd almost forgotten about it, and now I was reminded. It was great reading, Jen.
Well, that's why I like that scene. It does have a bit of humor in it. So
It does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nothing like a little bit of roundabout hell. To get caught.
Yeah, Dante's Circle. I love that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of roundabouts here.
Yeah.
We have them here too, and
Yeah.
what a perfect description. Dante's. I'm gonna have to remember that the next time I go around one of those damn things.
Yeah.
Especially
And
if you want to
usually
get
they're in the
somewhere.
most unnecessary places. You know, it's
I
like,
know.
oh, just let me turn.
I'd rather have speed bumps, to be honest. You know,
Yeah.
if that's the whole thing that they want to slow people down, put a speed bump there. Because those roundabouts, it's like who goes, and I mean, I just think that they are recipes for disaster.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Well, I guess you're looking on the different side of the road. For us, we have to check what's coming from the right, and then we can go. But it's probably the opposite way for you.
We have to look from every direction because God knows where they're coming
You
from.
can't trust people not to.
Yes.
Yeah. They all get confused. Trust me.
Yes,
All right. Annette, are you ready?
I am. I'm gonna skip well into to my latest release, The Next Generation, which is set 20 years in the future with the kids of all the women in the organization. And I'm going to actually skip and read a scene from where there's some action. So the first sort of scene where they are confronted with the bad guys. So here we go. Val wasn't about to let the asshats who had followed them into the city get the upper hand. She intended to quietly take them out before they even had a chance to execute their plan. Unfortunately, she hadn't counted on the Mexican police getting involved. Fucking A, she said as she dragged the second man's limp form back to his piece of shit vehicle and tossed him inside. Val recognized the gold chains and fancy dress on one of the men. He was the same guy she'd seen hanging at the bar with Grace's producer. Maria wasn't the only person who had noticed him skulking around. She felt an overwhelming need to exact the ultimate justice on him, but Shar had not improved elimination. Even though Val would bet her entire fortune, he was their original target. The mission had morphed into something new, but it was all tied together into one ugly package. Ah, what the fuck? He doesn't deserve to live. Pulling a syringe from her pocket, she plunged it into his heart. Overweight men had heart attacks every day. One less asshole to transport kids to the mines. She'd explain that executive decision later to Shar. Val only hoped a random passerby would assume both had too much to drink and were sleeping it off. Maybe they lived in their car. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility. It was the best she could do in the spur of the moment. And then Joy had alerted her to the fact that 2 Mexican police cars were fast approaching. At least Joy's machine had not detected any explosives. She was grateful for that. It was a brilliant plan. Get the police involved with some hokey excuse like Grace and her crew didn't have the correct permits to film in Mexico. She had to give it to them. It wasn't a bad plan. Now she had a decision to make. Val could take out the correct Mexican police with her darts, then grab the crew and get the hell out of there. Or she could try to offer a bribe. Alina was the first to reach Val. Pepper followed, still sucking in air. What's the plan? Joy said. What's the plan? Joy said the fuckwads had got the police involved. They're going to try to take them in, Alina said between puffs of breath. We can't let them do that. So it's either a setup and the police are involved, or someone else will take out both police cars once Grace, Nora, Sam, and Maria are in custody. I know, Alina, Val calmly responded. If the 2 men sleeping it off in their car are responsible for taking them out once in custody, we have time. One is enjoying a permanent siesta, she smirked. Why? Pepper asked. Val shrugged. He was your initial target. I made an executive decision. Pepper nodded. Works for me. The group started to make their way back to their vehicles, continuing their discussion of options. I think our best play is to offer money to the police. If they're simply looking to shake them down, it could resolve itself for the near future, at least until they have time to regroup. If the police don't take the bribe, we'll have to choose Plan B, Val directed. And what is Plan B? Because there is no way I'm letting them put Maria in that car. Alina pointed to the approaching Mexican vehicle. Me neither, Pepper added. Val watched as Grace approached more leisurely than Joy, Pepper, or Alina. She didn't paste on a smile, but greeted Grace. What in the hell is going on? Pepper, something has been off all morning, and I want to know what it is. Grace stood with her hands on her hips. Val smiled because Grace reminded her a little of her wife, Gina. She wasn't a physical fighting machine like Val, but could hold her own in a verbal battle. She wasn't sure it was good fortune when the first Mexican police officer approached, but at least it had interrupted what was sure to be a delicate conversation with Grace. She gestured with a quick lift of her head to Alina. Get Maria in case we need an interpreter. Val narrowed her eyes as the official approached. She watched his body language for signs that he might accept a bribe. She didn't get a good feeling, coupled with the fact that he seemed to know who Grace was on sight. Sam remained a respectable distance, but had turned her camera towards the hullabaloo. And Val thought maybe the filming could serve a later purpose. Thankfully, the officer was so focused on Grace, he didn't realize he was being filmed. Ms. Turner, you did not get a permit for filming in Mexico. the man said in heavily accented English. I'm afraid we will need to take you in for violating our laws. Where are your interpreter and film crew? Grace reached into her bag, smiled, and handed the man a paper. I'm sorry, but I believe you've been given misinformation. Here's the documentation needed. And your visas? We aren't planning on staying in Mexico for an extended period, Grayson answered. I believe we can film without a visa as long as we only plan on being here for less than 6 months. We cannot be short of that, so a visa is required. Come with me, please. The man jerked his head at the other 3 officers who approached. They made their way quickly to where Maria, Sam, and Nora stood, watching the scene unfold. While Sam was easily identifiable with her camera, Nora and Maria were not. Each man grabbed one of their arms at the same time. The officer speaking to Grace roughly handled her. Plan B it is. It's siesta time, Val directed. A dart landed in the officer closest to Val, and she didn't bother to help him to the ground as he crumpled, almost taking Grace with him. While Pepper offered a steady hand to Grace, Val aimed at the other 3 officers, but Alina must have already hit one of them as she saw him stumble and fall. The other two followed shortly after 2 darts hit their mark. Val didn't know and didn't care who had landed their shots. Time to go, girls. Alina, gather up Nora, Sam, and Maria. Joy, call for an extraction team and find us a place to lie low until they arrive. On it, Alina answered, running toward 2 shocked women and 1 smiling girl. Val supposed it wasn't terrible that at least Maria had seen the darts in action before. Sorry, Grace. Pepper will explain everything once we get on our way. Same configuration as on the way here, Val directed. Joy, give Pepper a comlink, okay? And an extra tablet if she wants. Yeah, I'll take a tablet too. Can I have some extra firepower, MV? Pepper answered. How about some beads? Val asked. Pepper grinned in response. Oh yeah, those'll do nicely. Be careful with them, honey. They're in a case right now so they don't jostle around too much. The case helps with the magnetism so they don't attach themselves to something we'd rather they avoid, but it makes them easier to hit a moving car, although they're still a little sensitive. Not my favorite thing to use, but your Aunt Rhonda has been drooling maniac around them. Totally her thing. Grab some in the back of the SUV before you take off. You can't be too cautious now. They'll be desperate. If you see a tail, toss a bead. You know what to look for. Pepper nodded and touched Grace's arm. Who are you people? Grace asked.
Very good. All right.
All right.
Fantastic readings, ladies.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, so I'm going to start out the questioning, Jen, if you don't mind. Changing Perspectives was a novel that entered into a completely new territory from your previous books. I thought it was awesome, by the way. Can you talk about what prompted you to get into something that might be considered outside of your comfort zone? Or was it? Was it outside of your comfort zone or not?
I'm terribly shocked that you even had to ask. I mean,
Inquiring minds, want to know.
No, totally outside my comfort zone. Yeah, the story is set in 1993, which is where I was living in London, working in London then. And I was walking to work one day and saw all these other commuters, 8 o'clock in the morning, all dressed very conservatively, as you can imagine. And then there's this one woman who stood out because she was dressed totally in black leather and chains hanging off various bits of her outfit. And I was just intrigued by this. I thought, well, who is she? Where's she going? Could she be going to work or coming back from somewhere? So this stuck in my mind, and then I started writing the story. And so the main character is Danny, and she's the one dressed in leather. And the first scene is she gets into a fight in a leather bar, which apparently isn't an unusual thing for her. So I wrote most of this story in 1993. And then 2 decades later, took it out of a drawer and gave it a bit of a brush up. And then it still took me a few more years to decide to submit it to Affinity. By then, they'd published 5 of my books, and so I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? They can say no. But I must say, I think it was the fastest acceptance I've ever had from submitting a book. So they were well into this as well. So you can better ask them that question. And then our intrepid cover designer was straight onto it as well. She said, "Oh, I've got the perfect picture for the cover." I think a lot of people have seen this cover. So
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Love
that
it.
worked really well for that character. So yes, I was very pleased with the response to it. I thought, well, it's not a book I want my mother to read, but she did read it. She said she didn't quite understand why people did that sort of thing, but hey, you know, who's to judge? You know, each to their own.
Right.
Which I thought was a great response.
Yeah.
Your mother read it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, fantastic. That's wonderful.
And
She's
so
93 years old.
what'd she say about it? Did she like it?
Oh, she liked it, but
Oh,
she
well, there
just
you go.
said she, you know, it wasn't the kind of lifestyle she would, you know, enjoy. But it was interesting to read. And yeah, no, she was very, very supportive.
So you're dancing around the whole, wasn't the kind, come on, spit it out. Tell us what this lifestyle was. So people know because,
Well, so Danny is very much into BDSM and she's a masochist. So her problem is she's 36 years old at the start of the story, and she hasn't been able to find a partner who really can be what she wants, you know, a dominant partner,
yeah,
a loving relationship.
right.
Because one of the parts of the research I did, because I had to do research for this, I'll tell you, and came across this phrase that S&M standing for sensuality and mutuality. So between the two people, there has to be this
Yep.
trust.
So,
But
yeah, I understand that you going to offer up a book, right?
Oh yeah.
For- Yeah, for a giveaway. So you want to tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about
very
that?
happy to offer up a signed paperback copy of one of the books we talked about today. So it's like starting over, or got Changing Perspectives over here,
Okay, great.
or the follow-up book to Changing Perspectives, which was Changing Times.
Okay, wonderful. So for all of you who are listening out there, if you want to make a comment or ask a question, and hopefully we can maybe respond to those questions if you send them to us, I will make sure I pull a name. And I'll also offer up the audio or ebook of the next generation for anybody that we pull a name for.
Okay.
So don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe, please. And yeah, we're good.